looking to feedback to help us grow and to challenge us. However, we don't just have to blindly accept feedback, that all feedback is not meant for us. And there can be feedback that is meant for us, but we may need space and time to process that feedback before we're able to receive that. And for it to be okay for us to give ourselves that time and ask for that time to be able to process the feedback that we're given. That if we're receiving feedback without that opportunity to process, we can come across as defensive, irritated, and then we're going to get feedback that we are unable to receive feedback, which we don't want. So give ourselves that space and time to process feedback. When I was working at a university counseling center, we had meetings that included both the staff and the trainees. And there were several of these meetings where the staff made comments that felt inappropriate and off and not culturally sensitive. So following one of these meetings, I had an immediate meeting with our trainees and I processed what their feelings and reactions were to the comments that were made in that meeting, which they expressed. How they were feeling was similar to what I had observed. And then I encouraged them and gave them this feedback to advocate for themselves and express these things in our next combined meeting. And that's what they did. They expressed themselves, and I supported them and encouraged and co-signed the comments that they made. Meeting's over. I was unaware that my fellow staff members had a very strong reaction to that, felt like they had been blindsided by what the students or the trainees were saying, and didn't appreciate how I participated in that and encouraging them to come to them with those complaints. So they had a meeting about that and were planning and preparing to give me feedback on their experience of the combined meeting. Fortunately, I had someone who was in that meeting looking out for me and said, "Hey, this happened after you left the meeting and they're going to bring it up on Monday." Great. I have time to prepare and process what happened and feedback. So when I came in Monday and we were all meeting again, or the staff was meeting again, they expressed their concerns to me, feeling as though it was inappropriate for me to have had that meeting with the trainees and not have discussed those things with them. And this was an opportunity for me, because I had time to process it, to recognize there were two issues that were occurring. One was a culture and climate issue, and it was not my responsibility to try to manage anyone's fragile ego, and that when inappropriate comments were made, I was going to continue to express these things and advocate for these cultural and climate changes. And I wasn't going to coddle their feelings around that. So it's one important thing for me to express. And then the feedback that I was able to receive is there may have been another way to approach that. This was my first job out of graduate school. I may have still had more alignment and affiliation with the students than I did with my fellow staff members. And after I had that meeting with the trainees, yes, I could have then come to my fellow staff members, express what was going on, and then we could come back together and maybe had a more productive meeting. That was a professional development moment for me. That was an area of growth. That other piece that was not about me, that was about the individuals and them being able to deal with when they are being called out or when they're receiving feedback. So I wasn't going to take responsibility for that. So when we have space and time, we can also plan and prepare. They were planning and preparing for that meeting for me to be also able to prepare for the meeting that they're going to have. So then I'm not coming across as defensive. I'm coming off as informed and able to advocate for myself while also being open to the feedback that is for me. So to give ourselves that space to process. That if we are called into a meeting with our boss, here's your evaluation. Here are 4 things that you need to grow. So you have a 3 out of 5, and here's some of the things that you're doing well. Can you sign this? I didn't know that I was getting 3s on this and that this is what the experience was, or that people were feeling this way. And no, I cannot sign this because I'm in a state of shock. I may be coming across as defensive. I don't know what to do. I don't want to say or express the wrong thing right now because that won't look good for me. That it would be reasonable to ask, can I have some time to look this over? Can I have some time to read this through? When can we meet again after I've had the opportunity to look at this in more detail? So to ask and advocate for ourselves when we need more time to process. And the piece of my experience where, one, I was not going to receive the first part of the feedback they were giving me because it was not for me. But the second part I was able to receive. We don't have to take in all the feedback. Simply because someone is saying, this is what's going on, or this is my experience of you, we don't just have to believe those things. Especially when we have time and space to process the experience, we can consider what parts of the feedback are making sense and are relevant to me, and what parts of this feedback are not for me or I don't have to incorporate, that we can have choice in that. And it's easier for us to have that choice when we have the time and space to process the feedback and to work through any defensiveness or confusion that we might be experiencing. So we're going to consider the source of the feedback. And with that, too, thinking about the source of the feedback, when we have a strong relationship with someone, we want to also be able to empathize with what it might be like for them to give us that feedback and why they're giving us this feedback. So if a friend comes to you and says, hey, I wanted to let you know that sometimes it's really hard to be around you. Because if I say something that you don't like or you don't agree with, I feel like you criticize me and attack me, and I don't like that. Now, your immediate reaction may be to be defensive and to attack, or I don't do that, or I don't know why you feel that way, or there's nothing I can do about that. Uh, but the person who's giving you that feedback, if they truly are your friend, that probably took a lot for them to approach you and be vulnerable in those ways and say to you that I care about this relationship. That's why I want to share this with you, because I can't continue to be in a relationship where I feel attacked and criticized. And I want that to change because I want us to still be in a relationship with each other. It would take a lot of vulnerability and strength for them to have that conversation with you. Now, again, it is not just blindly receiving that feedback, but we can first stop and have empathy for the person giving us that feedback, that it likely took a lot for them to say that to us. And they're saying this to us in a place of care and concern. So, who is giving us the feedback and the reasons behind the feedback are going to be important. And to be able to try to empathize with the feedback where we feel like it is coming from a place of care and concern, that they value the relationship, which is why we're getting that feedback. So, when feedback is being directed to you, being able to have time to process the information that you're receiving and to come back and revisit those conversations, consider the source of the feedback, and also holding empathy for the individual giving you that feedback, especially if it's challenging feedback coming from someone who cares about you.